Hey everyone, Kevin here from the future to provide you with a quick update to this carrier install video. Now Daryl already filmed this install a while back, and the only thing that's really changed is this pin track and how it installs, so I'm going to show you that now. Now the biggest difference with this pin track is that it used to be able to be installed after the carrier and spindle assembly was already on the bumper. Now the biggest reason for this change was that it makes this removable, so you no longer have this rounded section protruding from the bumper if you're not running one of our carriers. So you're going to want to get this in before your spindle ever goes in the bumper. It'll simply bolt to this top face using 1/4 inch flathead hardware. So you can set that down there, get the bolt in place, get your hand up underneath and install the nut. Then we can do the same thing over here on this side. And then one tip, before you tighten these up, you're going to want to grab your spindle and temporarily install that in this hole just to help with alignment of that track before tightening these up with a 5/32 hex. After that, the rest of this carrier install is going to be exactly the same.
Hey everyone, Daryl here in the Victory 4x4 Garage. Today I'm going to show you how to assemble and install our Adventure Swing Out. This is a dual swing option available for many of our bumpers, but the assembly is the same on almost all of them, so let's get started. You're going to go ahead and grab this spindle here, and I would recommend putting some anti-seize on this portion that slides into the bumper. That way you can remove it easily if need be. I'm grabbing this out of the side of my broken classy anti-seize tube. Nothing but the best. I'll go ahead and slide that on that portion, and then you can slide that right into the bumper. Just like that. And then there's going to be a large 3/4 inch grade 8 bolt and washer. I would also put some anti-seize on this. And then we're going to fish this bolt up from the bottom on the inside. You may have to pick the spindle up to get the bolt started. We can just leave that snug for now. Once you get that bolt installed in there, you can go ahead and tighten it down with a 1 1/8 inch end wrench. I don't really have a torque for you here. It'd be pretty impossible to get a torque wrench, but tight is fine. As long as this bolt doesn't go out, it's not going to go anywhere. All this is doing is holding that spindle down into the sleeve. The sleeve itself is what supports the weight. Now we got to put some grease in these bearings, and it really doesn't matter what grease you use, anything you find around the house. These have no real high load on them, but they do need to be greased. So the best way to do this is to put some grease in your hand. You could wear a glove if you were smarter than I am. And you're going to take this bearing, the edge of this bearing, and you're going to pull it through the grease while you turn the bearing. You're basically pulling, I'll come to the camera, you're basically pulling the edge of the cage of the bearing through the grease, and you're looking for it to pop up on the other side. So you can see it right there coming up on the needles. You're just forcing that grease all the way around. Until you see grease on the needles. So there's one. This will make a mess. It's fine. And as long as you keep the cap on the tire carrier spindle and the seal on the bottom stays good, you should never need to grease these again. All right, and then while your hands are a mess, go ahead and take the seal and wipe some grease on the lip of that. As well. And then you can clean this mess of grease off your hands. All right, now we got to assemble this portion of the tire carrier. So we're going to flip it upside down, and the first thing we're going to grab is a bearing, one of the bearings that we greased earlier. So that's going to go inside of there first. Then we're going to grab the seal that we put some grease on, and you're going to want to put this seal in. There's a rubber dust lip that protrudes. That's going to go up in this instance, or when the carrier goes in the bumper, it should be down. So as we're assembling this carrier upside down, it's going to face up, but when the carrier goes in the bumper, it'll face down. So now you can take a small punch or a small flat blade screwdriver and hit this in just by tapping all the way around the circumference of that seal, or you can grab a big socket or a big piece of tube if you have it and do the same thing all at once. This is a Dana 60 hub socket, so you probably don't have that, but a screwdriver or a punch will work. Also, just takes a little more time. Just go ahead and hammer that seal down. You don't have to go crazy with it, but just enough so probably so the lip of that seal is flush with the bottom of the sleeve. So the rubber lip should be just about flush with the bottom of the sleeve. If you go too far, you can hammer it back just a little bit using the bearing from the opposite side. Now once we get that seal on there, we're going to go ahead and just flip this over, and you can slide it over the spindle that you installed in the bumper. Maybe a little finicky while you seat that lower bearing there. Once that is done, you can grab the upper bearing that you greased. Oh, by the way, these bearings are identical, so it doesn't matter which one you put where. Sorry, I didn't mention that. Grab the upper one that you greased. Grab this big washer here and this big nut. Grease all over my hands. And then for now, just go ahead and snug this nut down. This uses a 1.5 inch socket, or if you don't have that, you can carefully use an adjustable wrench, but make sure that you're not touching the threads of the sleeve with your adjustable wrench while you're tightening it. Because if you screw those threads up, you're going to have a bad time getting the cap on. Now that you have that snug, you can grab 1.5 inch socket, or like I said, very, very carefully with an adjustable wrench. And you can just tighten that down. Just kind of snug. You don't really want any play in the bearings at all, but you don't want it so tight that you're putting a bunch of unneeded stress on the bearings as well. So you just want it just about like that. So a little bit of a push will move it, but it's not dragging too bad. And you can always, after you get weight on it, you may have to come back in here and retighten this once you get a tire or whatever else you're going to put on this swing. But that's that. Okay, next we're going to put on this aluminum cap that we make here with our little bomb-proof logo on there, a bomb-proof spindle. You're going to want to make sure that you use anti-seize here. It's very important. This is aluminum, that's steel. They will corrode together. So I'm going to use the last little bit out of my anti-seize that's on its last legs. Gross. I'm going to get anti-seize everywhere and just put it on my hands. So just coat these threads with anti-seize, and that way you won't have any issue taking this apart later. Okay, 45 minutes later, the anti-seize is off my hands. We're going to hand thread this on as far as we can go, just to make sure that we are threaded properly. If you cross thread this, you're going to have a mess. And then we provide this handy wrench for you to tighten down this cap. There is an O-ring on here, so you don't have to go crazy with it. Snug is fine, and just keep this wrench handy if you ever want to remove it. Now we're going to open this carrier all the way like that so we can install the stainless steel track. And this is just for the pin, the stay open pin to slide on, so it doesn't slide on your finish and ruin your powder coat. So we're going to give you some little 1/4 inch flush, what do you want to call these, countersunk? 1/4 inch countersunk bolts. One there and one there. And then some 1/4 inch flange nuts. So one flange nut goes on the outside here. That's pretty simple to get to. And the other one, you're going to have to contort your hand up inside of here to get to that one. But it's not terrible. And then 5/32 is what you're going to use to tighten that one down. Now we're going to put this plunger in, and I like to add some grease to this first. This isn't sealed by any means, so if you live in a wet climate, you want to keep up on the grease on this. I'm going to use a little bit of waterproof marine grease on this, and that way we can keep rust away. You can use anti-seize on this too. I just like the way grease lasts on it. And like I said, if you live somewhere with a lot of moisture, salt on the road, you want to do this pretty frequently, or this will kind of rust up in there, and you don't want that. I'm just going to put a little more grease in here. You can use whatever you have, but this waterproof grease seems to work really well. Then there's a knurl on there you can grab with a pair of pliers or channel locks. You don't have to go crazy. Just snug that up like that. A word on what this little drop pin is for. This pin is meant to hold the carrier open so that it doesn't close by itself on a hill or whatever. It is not meant as a stop. So what we don't want you to do is that, because what that can do is it can shear the pin first of all, and if the pin doesn't grab for some reason, it'll let that carrier swing all the way open, and your tire can hit the corner of your 4Runner, and you just don't want that. So we want to only rely on this pin to work as a stop. So open the carrier by yourself and let that pin drop in, and if it doesn't drop in, pull it open, clean it up, and re-grease it. But that is what the pin is meant for. Now we're going to install this bump stop bracket here, and that has 2 little rubber bumpers. These can kind of be a bear to get in these holes sometimes, so a little spray of WD-40 on them helps. You could also use a screwdriver to push them in, but usually if you spray them with a lubricant and then push them in, they should go just fine, or twist them in, sometimes that works also. All right, now that we have this bracket well lubricated and our hands well lubricated with WD-40, we're going to go ahead and install it. We're going to do that with these button head bolts here. There's 3 of them with 3 flange nuts, serrated flange nuts. So we can start by hanging it on with 2 of those bolts, and we can loosely put 2 of these flange nuts on the back. And then 1 of these bolts goes from the bottom with a flange nut. We can finger tighten all of those. Now you may be able to just hold on to the flange nut and tighten these down, but if you find that flange nut is spinning like on this one, just grab a 9/16 end wrench or socket and hold on to the flange nut from the back. You're going to want these pretty tight. This whole mechanism holds your latch on, so if you have some red Loctite, you can use that here as well.
Okay, now we're going to bolt on this latch here, and we're going to give you some stainless steel 1/4 inch bolts, button head bolts, and flange nuts for that, 4 of them. And there's some adjustability in this bracket, so I'll show you how that works in a minute. So just bolt it on loosely right now, and I will show you how to adjust it. Once you get that loosely installed, you want to adjust it so that the foot here is contacting the nut. So you need to have the majority of this foot contacting on that nut, and then just test it like that. If that's all good, go ahead and tighten everything down with a 5/32 hex wrench or hex socket. Now we're going to put the carrier side of the tire mount on, and there's lots of options on here for where you want to put this for your needs. You can put it up higher for more clearance. You can put it up or put it lower for a better sight line through the rear window. Just kind of up to you. We're going to put ours right here in this spot for right now. We're going to give you some 1/2 inch hardware, this hex head hardware with flange nuts. So you're going to use those to tighten this down. And then these are going to tighten down with a 3/4 inch end wrench and socket, or a 19 will work too. if that's what you got. Now we're going to install the studs in the tire carrier portion of this bracket. There's a multitude of patterns on this one. On the Toyota, you're going to use, usually, the inner 3, but go ahead and check this on your spare tire to make sure. And what you're going to do is take the wheel stud and push it through the back of the plate, and then we're going to put some washers here, 2 or 3 washers on the opposite side. Sorry, I'm back. And then take a lug nut and put it on backwards, so the face of the lug nut is against those washers. Now with an impact or by clamping this in a vise and using a large ratchet, we are going to pull this stud through the plate. And I'll leave it here on this angle to show you how it works. Now with an impact and a 13/16 socket, I will go ahead and just pull that stud through the steel. You want to do it till the stud is flush with the back of the plate. Now that we pressed all 3 of those wheel studs through, we're going to loosely bolt this on to the carrier portion, and we're going to do that with these carriage bolts, these 1/2-inch carriage bolts, 1 on each side. They slide through the carrier portion first and then through this mount. But you probably can't see that, so I'll show you on the other side here. And then they get a flange nut underneath, and we're going to leave these loose right now because we still have to space this out. So we want the back of our tire to sit right here, so we'll have to measure that back space before we tighten this down. Now to measure the back spacing we're going to need, including the tire, we'll grab either a broom handle or a level, set it across the tread of the tire on the back with the front facing down. Then grab your ruler and just go ahead and measure right up to the bottom of that straight edge. So we're right around 5 5/8, so we'll set it at 5 1/2, and that'll give us kind of an 1/8 of squeeze once we put it on there, and it'll secure that tire a little better. Now if you're installing our camera and license plate relocation bracket, you're going to want to put this portion of that bracket on there first. So that just slides over there, and it's multi-pattern. It's designed for a lot of different bolt patterns, but that goes first, and then we'll mount the tire on. All right, now go ahead and slide your tire over the studs and install 3 of the 1/2-inch 20 lug nuts. All right, so after you get that tire tightened down, you want to check and make sure that it's pressing against the tire carrier here, and that just adds a little bit of stability. If you're installing our license plate and camera relocation bracket, check out the video for that on its product page. And if you have any questions about this product or any product at Victory 4x4, feel free to give us a call, 269-459-8447, or email us, info@victory4x4.com. Thanks for becoming part of the Victory 4x4 family. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.